Excellent. Welcome back, folks. We're going to switch gears. So we've been talking about SD-WAN in part one, different components of SD-WAN. So this part is what really makes this SD-branch. We're going to move over to the SD-LAN section. How exactly we take care of the branch LAN components, what problems exist there today, how do we solve that, what's our unique differentiation, and so on. So remember this world where it used to be full of VLANs, and this is typical branch network. You have a branch edge firewall, you have a voice VLAN, you have data VLAN, you have printers, and VLANs were essentially your policy container. Essentially, you carry the VLAN all the way up to your layer 3 hop. It could be a firewall, gets mapped to a different trust zone. You would apply policies, ACLs, so on and so forth. Remember when mobility came over, then you actually have a lot more VLANs. Now you have one for corporate, guest, BIOD. You multiply that, we are kind of swimming in VLANs by now. So this used to be the problem for Aruba, I would say 10, 15 years ago. This is still the problem for a vast majority of our customers because they are still using VLAN-based policy model. Now, this is kind of what Aruba Wi-Fi, I would say the best product in that industry because of this unique differentiation where we wanted to move away from VLANs as a policy object into users. Every policy that we do, we always did in Aruba Wi-Fi was based on users. The moment a user joins a network, like I mentioned, or the device gets profiled, we assign a specific user role. All of the policies are applied to the user role directly, whether it's about what level of access they have at the network, what can they talk to, what apps they can talk to, what is the east-west profiling. If it's a printer, what can the printer do? If it's an IoT camera, what can the IoT camera do? If you have a lot more users, every user kind of becomes a segment of one, and all the policies, not just the firewall and segmentation policies, which traditionally VLAN used to do. In addition to that, all of your SD-WAN policies now, your QoS, your path selection, your routing, your topology, everything could be tied to a segment of one here. So that is what makes SD-LAN really, really unique. This is just a real-world example of what we see there. We have different types of devices that join the LAN. We don't really care whether it's Wi-Fi users or wired users. Everybody gets tunneled in a branch network to what we call as the branch gateways. So the reason why we do that is we can do segmentation even within a LAN, right? Even within the same VLAN. For instance, we had a retail customer close to 5,000 locations. They had 13 VLANs in every single store. Every type of device in their store belonged to a different VLAN. The printers, the cameras, they even had clocks because they are a global company. They wanted the clocks to be in sync. It was connected to the IP network. The traditional way, put them on a different VLAN, different DHCP subnet, you build an ACL. The moment you want to introduce another type of device, you have to go through the same process again. Sign a different VLAN, go update all of your ACLs that you've applied to that VLAN to figure out what can you talk to. In this case, we figure out which device belongs to which of these subnets. They moved over to roles in ClearPass now. So they essentially have two VLANs. Technically, they could have done with one VLAN in the network, one subnet, but they still have to follow the PCI guidelines. So they actually put the PCI in one VLAN. Everybody else belongs to a VLAN called operational VLAN, right? Operational and transactional, what they call is. And then you actually profile them, understand the roles they belong to, and you can actually build policies around it and say, okay, these users, I want to allow them to Office 365. These users can talk to the camera. Okay, probably there is a lateral east-west malware spread going on. Randomly, why is the printer trying to talk to the cash register? Or why is the thermostat in the fish tank is trying to talk to something else? All those crazy things you hear about. If you have an architecture, if you really think about it, this is kind of zero trust, where nobody is able to talk to anybody else in the network until you have a policy that allows that. Until the ClearPass says who you are, okay, I know who you are, I understand your policies, and they can enforce it on the gateway, they can't talk to each other. So that's the model we follow. That's the model we're preaching and deploying with customers. And we are leveraging this context for everything else now, for SD-WAN as well. Questions? I see.
Do you have design guides for those of us that have to deal with things like compliance in the realm of PCI and HIPAA when you're going through these audits and there's all these very specific things they look for? Do you guys have design validation around how you would leverage this to build that in a way that would pass those compliance metrics?
Yeah, absolutely. We have Aruba validated designs for retail and different verticals, which talks about what type of compliance. What we're working on is within Aruba Central, we can generate reports on once you design the network, are you truly compliant? Can you generate a PCI report on the fly?
Right.
That's something we're automating as well. We're working on that.
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, so what we have is just design guides you could follow and implement yourself.
So that you can hit all of those benchmarks on the audit before the audit rather than going back, dragging your way back through the network post-audit.
Exactly. Starting off with PCI, HIPAA would follow for automation. Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So you're showing that the firewalling is happening at the branch gateway, but for larger sites, Does that mean you're going to haul all of the traffic to the gateway and then apply filtering there? Or can you push the policy down closer to the endpoint? I think you had mentioned earlier you can get closer, but I just wanted to clarify based on this slide.
Great question.
Does that make sense as a question?
So that's a good question. What we can do in larger environments, and typically you see more this in the campus than in a branch, is first of all, we can build a cluster here of multiple gateways or controllers. We are moving them to calling them security gateways because that's really what they are, so that you distribute the load across multiple devices. But then you may still want to not send everything up there. So we selectively, based on the user role, either tunnel or bridge locally. So perhaps if you have a trusted device that is authenticating using a .1x with a certificate, and you have antivirus on that one, ClearPass is saying this is good, you bridge it. If you have an IoT device that you're not too comfortable with, you tunnel it. Okay, so you build that wrapper around the devices that you don't trust that much. You let the devices that you trust just switch naturally as they've been doing for a long time. Now in the branch, that is not the primary use case. The primary use case is to simplify the network, to try and collapse services into fewer devices. So here, as an example, we're collapsing the firewall, the gateway, the SD-WAN gateway. We're collapsing the tunnels, the DPS, all in one device. So here, we don't have that much east-west traffic. So we generally say, just tunnel everything there. There's not a lot of east-west traffic. Having everything directly plugged into your firewall gives you enough benefit to compensate for the potential drawback of having a camera going to the VCR through the firewall instead of going directly through the switch. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you.
So this is an example of what we've been talking about. So ClearPass profiles the device, and it has a policy that says if it's an employee, that's the demo we want to show as well. We're kind of going through what the demo topology looks like. This is exactly what we have. We have ClearPass, which will show. We have the branch gateway, which is acting as a firewall for the LAN now. And you have an AP, we have a switch, we have different types of devices. We have a camera that you could see there, and you have an employee device. If it's a regular employee in a branch location, if they're trying to access the CCTV feed, of course, they're not allowed to access. But if it's a security iPad, where there is a security employee and they want to access the camera, you have to allow that. And in this case, we have put them in same DHCP scope, same subnet, same VLAN, same everything. And we're defining dynamic segmentation policies. So the policies don't really care about what's IP address and so on. It's really based on the roles. And we can show you, even within the same network, how could you actually apply a dynamic segmentation policy. So that's the demo is all about.
But
there's some animation in terms of what it does.
So basically what Manny has explained in this slide is exactly what we're going to do now. Let me switch to my computer, which was number 3. So first thing we're going to see is I have 2 devices here. One is my computer that I've now connected to the corporate network. You can see that my computer, you have Samuel here, Mac OS, is employee. Okay, ClearPass has profiled it. I've authenticated using .1x. It is employee. I have another device here, this iPad, that is going to be, has a username that's called security. So my iPad is in the security user role. As you can imagine, the security person in a certain office, store, etc., has to be able to access the security cameras, right? But an employee does not need that access. So if I bring my iPad here, I can see you guys. If you can wave to the screen, you can see people moving. My iPad is seeing everyone moving. And if I go to Aruba Central, we can look for the security guy. And just click on the device. See, this is what we saw before, right? The iPad is connected to that access point, goes to the switch, goes to the gateway. I can see my sessions. I know this camera uses, of course, I want to see the sessions on the gateway, which is where I have the policies. I know the camera uses port 9000, and I have a policy.
Keep an eye on the subnet as well real quick. They all belong to the same subnet, 10.127.26. They belong to standard VLAN, VLAN 1. We haven't done any type of regular segmentation such as DHCPs or VLANs.
Yeah, you see that my policy says you are in the group security, you're hitting at permit any. I wasn't too thoughtful with the policies. I just give it as security all, like and allow all, but you would normally just have your set of policies saying security guy can hit camera user role, for instance. Okay, we're gonna see, wait a minute, I wanna show you my computer first. So we're gonna see how my computer, I have this app here, is trying to hit the camera. There's no way I can hit the camera. I'm trying through the browser, blasting it through the browser. I can't get to it. Let's look at Central. Let's see what it tells us. Okay, so look for Samuel. And once again, this, by the way, this Central is interpreting what could I mean by Samuel. Of course, in this case, it's very obvious, but it's maybe I'm looking for Samsung. I may be looking for something else. Okay. So just Samuel, once again, into invisibility. Let's look at the sessions, and let's look at them in the firewall where I'm creating the policies. And let's look for that destination IP, which was our camera. You see all the denied here for both the HTTP as well as the port 9000, which is what the app uses. From user role employee to user role camera, deny. Very simple. I can apply that to my 5,000 stores like Manny referred to before. It is very dynamic in the sense that I can promote myself. I have access to ClearPass, so I can do whatever I want. I can promote myself to being security. I can demote the security guy to being guest. I can do that in real time. No looking at policies the way we were looking at them before. From this IP to that IP, from this subnet to that subnet, everything is dynamic. I can configure it from the group level, filters down to all the devices.
And hopefully you saw how the policy is defined here again. It's not referring to any IP address or VLAN, it's just saying user role camera. So the camera is an object that just carries forward. Tomorrow you could actually apply a different set of devices to that role, and everybody just follows that user role.
Yes. Yeah. Before I came to the US, I was telling you, some of you, that I came 3 years ago. I was in SC, and we did this with a customer of ours. And we started that project back then. Now they have 40 different user roles in their stores with 2 subnets. This customer in particular has 7,500 sites worldwide. Imagine managing 40 different subnets times 7,500. There's someone there that's saying, no way. Okay? Do the math. You ran out of addressing space. So this is tremendously simplifying the LAN communication. That's why I think that what you were saying before, that it makes sense to yes, go through the firewall for the benefit of logically being plugged into the firewall. I no longer need subnets to enforce policy. I am directly connected to the firewall. Okay? There was a question at the very beginning. You asked Ramanan. Let's go back to number 4. I don't know what.
Can I interrupt for just a second? The policy that you were showing in there, that's being configured in Central?
Yes,
is that
in
being
Central, push to the gateway. The authentication happens at ClearPass, the profiling and all of that.
Right.
The assignment happens. The enforcement happens on the gateway, which is acting as a firewall.
Right.
The gateway is managed by Central. You define those policies in Central. Like camera cannot talk to this, security cannot talk to this. Gets pushed down to all the gateways in the fabric. Everybody can follow those policies.
And the mapping of you as a user and whatnot, that's being done back in ClearPass?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
So ClearPass is the one that says Nick is employee, Manny is security. Okay? ClearPass could also send me the full policy, but I believe we have a better, with the hierarchical configuration in Central, I believe we have a better way to manage the policies in Aruba Central than you would in ClearPass. In ClearPass, sending the whole policy is very useful in the case of a network where you may have different vendors and so on. But here in this scenario, the hierarchical configuration just does it very, very easily for me.
But it is possible. If you want to say, I want to authenticate using ClearPass, also define the RBAC for the user in ClearPass itself, you could do that. Right. But since we mentioned customers have different regions, they want hierarchical policies depending on the regions, Central is a better interface to create those policies. Yeah.
So question on that on a totally different line. How do you guys handle vSOC integration with a SIM? Does that come out of the central manager, or where does that, how do you deal with those policies and putting that into a SIM? Do you guys have your own SIM, or does that go to a third-party SIM? What does that look like?
It's a combination of all, depending on the customers that we work with. Most customers, they have their own SIM at large enterprises.
Okay.
So we can actually, using API integrations, which is push all the firewall logs, deny logs, allow logs into them. That's one way.
Okay.
We have REST APIs for that. We have traditional sys logs for that. And some customers ask us, hey, why don't you be that security interface as well? Because I'm managing my APs, my gateways, my switches. All of my firewall logs should come from Central. We also have, starting with...
that's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
It seems like it would make more sense to dump it out of Central than it would to dump that all from the individual devices.
Correct, but it's kind of building up to that, because if you think of what Splunk could do versus, you have to build up to that range.
Right.
But if you're looking for deny logs in terms of what my firewall is doing, what it's being denied, what policy it is hitting, you want to be alerted when a user keeps going to a certain location.
Right.
Those kind of logs we could, of course, get from Central.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Nick had a question before when Raman was presenting. He asked, how come if you have an instant AP, the AP is tunneled? Here in this case, the access point is acting, you said it well, as an access point. It is independent of the gateway. It is not acting as a controller. Access point is the authenticator. My device is doing .1x. What happens is that the authentication cannot go to ClearPass through any other path than the gateway, because it is my default gateway. Gateway is snooping the authentication, snooping the user role received from ClearPass, okay? And it's when it's sent back to the AP, the gateway fetches it. What I've done here, additionally, is I have plugged the AP into a tunnel port on the switch. So all the ports except for the uplink in the switch are tunneled to the gateway. This is just like a few ports that I have here. We have done this at scale. We have a customer that has over 150 access points in a large warehouse. What we do in that case, because we have Central taking care of the management, we don't need the concept of cluster. We just run the APs in standalone mode, and we can scale a lot more than just the typical 100 APs or so that we would do in an instant cluster. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, that's what the 135 or 140 is the max on instant, so I guess that would make sense.
128.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not so much the number of access points in the cluster, it's the number of clients in the cluster. So by breaking it up into standalone access points, you still have all the roaming working fine, because it's shared across the network, but one AP doesn't have to track all the 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 user sessions.
Well, so my question on that, and I was holding it, so this may actually be a good time. So the instant APs, like when in the small site, you had the instant kind of as the gateway, right? So how do you get around? I know previously, and maybe the hardware is better, but previously I know you turn on app RF and the IAP kind of eats itself very, very quickly.
Yes.
So what have you done to fix that within the IAPs that we can actually use that as a gateway then as well?
That was a memory problem.
Okay.
The APs you're referring to, the low-end 200
Yep.
series, were a little short on memory for the 3,000 plus apps that we have in the
Right.
DPI engine. So the new access points have more memory and can handle that easily.
Okay, and so they're actually doing the same thing as a gateway, just as a light
Absolutely.
version, basically.
Yeah, you could do DPI-based policy straight up on the APs.
Yes.
Okay.
It doesn't do the more advanced policies like the one we used. We used here, the user A to user role B. That you cannot do an access point. That's why I'm tunneling it to the gateway, applying all my security policies in one place. I would do it anyway because I wanted it in one place and collapsed.
Right.
But you better do it. It's better to do it on the gateway for that reason as well.
Well,
Okay.
and I do have to say and I think a lot of people have commented both online and in here, but one thing you guys have done very well, and I hope it continues, just, the interfaces and everything, especially if you're used to the products, are just the same across everything. And it's
if you
Keep
know
doing
our
it.
wireless,
You know where to go for
learn our
everything.
switches and gateways.
And it's all role-based. I mean, if you understand that, that makes it so much easier to
Absolutely.
use.
Thank you for that. Yeah. All right. So we talked about in terms of how it is better. I think we should. Move
Yeah,
to this one.
this we already mentioned. Basically, because we are plugging directly into the gateway or logically into the firewall, the need for VLANs is significantly reduced. Some subnet you're still going to create, like guest subnet or perhaps PCI, like Manny was mentioning, but you don't need 17. That we believe is a significant improvement.